Welcome to Optily Radio, your regular 30-minute dose of everything you need to accelerate your e-commerce marketing success.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Optily Radio. I'm your host, Nina White, and I'm really excited to say that this is our 25th episode. And to mark the occasion, we have David Perry on with us today. David is the CEO of Carro, a new e-commerce partnership network that's used by over 30,000 Shopify brands. GetCarro.com helps brands gain attention, sales, and new customers by partnering with other brands in the network. Before starting Carro, David was in the video game development space, where he created a video game streaming service that was eventually acquired by Sony and that you may have heard of. It's now called PlayStation Now. And from the Optily team, we have Adam Vaira joining us again. Adam is our client strategy consultant who has guided many store owners on the best strategies and solutions for growing their business, while also being a Shopify store owner himself. Welcome to the show, David and Adam.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Nina.
Cool. So, David, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your past experience that is super interesting in the video game industry, and how does all that led you to Carro?
Yeah, well, I actually grew up in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, and I've lost my accent. There's a few things. I've lost my accent, and you also can't tell that I'm 6'8" tall in this little window. A lot of kids come up to me. They think I've wasted my entire life because I didn't do basketball instead of going off and making video games. But in Northern Ireland, there's very little basketball. There's a lot of rugby, and playing basketball with rugby players was a really bad move, a very dangerous sport. And so I got into this idea of making video games, and it's back when games were black and white. So you literally had little you'd be the letter V or something like that, and I'd be the letter A, and you could play different games that way. And there was no music. So I have no musical talent, but I can make a computer beep when you die and things like that. So boom, I'm making video games, and I started getting paid for that. And so I'm in high school. In America here, we call it candy. In Ireland, it's sweets. And you buy, I literally was like the candy baron. I had this huge backpack of candy that I carried around. And that was, when you're a kid, that's a big deal to be able to realize that anytime you put into something, you'll generate more cash. And so I was just up all night long typing. And I then realized after a while that the video game industry wasn't in Ireland. It seemed like it was to me, but it really wasn't. It was happening in England. And so I got a job offer to leave high school and go straight to, making video games professionally. And so I moved to England to do that. And that was really fun. The big secret that I learned was that branding is everything. So I could make a video game called Jumpy Boy and nobody cares, or I can make the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and even if the game was the same, it's going to be a number one hit. And that's what happened. Is my career just went crazy every time I touched a branded video game versus just making a regular game. So that was a pretty good thing. I started working on the Terminator, which was for James Cameron. And I then realized that the US was actually where the game industry is. And so I got on a plane, flew to California, and started making games out here. One of the last big ones I did was The Matrix, when it was at its absolute peak. I'm the guy that turned down The Matrix first time around. So I was offered the rights, and I said, no, I don't want that. I'm too busy doing other things. So I turned it down. And can you imagine that? You've turned on The Matrix, and then you go and see The Matrix. And I'm sitting in the movie theater with my wife going, this is really good. Then after that, I got a chance to make the Matrix games based on Reloaded and the future of that. So that was really fun. But the long-term thing for me was, what do I do next? And I got interested in this idea of sort of more of an entrepreneurial way to think. Is you sort of think to yourself, if I was to do something, how would I beat it? And then you say, well, how would I beat that? And if I did build that, how would I beat that? And if I built that, how would I beat that? And you do that until you've run out of ideas. And in our case, it was, what's the future of the game industry? Someday So, the way today music is suddenly available, every song ever recorded pretty much can be accessed through the internet. Why wouldn't that happen to video games? So someday I'd like to have every game everywhere instantly. And that's where we ended up at the end of the track. So if you wanted every game everywhere instantly, what would that take? And we just started building the technology to do that. And by building that technology, Sony sort of jumped in and bought our company. That left me retired. I built the world's coolest man cave, which has woodworking, metalworking, 3D printing, every kind of thing you can imagine, including a photo studio. And that's where I was going to retire to. But one of the first things I did was I started photographing social media influencers, and because no one cared about my photography. If I took pictures of influencers, they cared about the pictures. And I found myself listening to the sort of the woes of being a social media influencer and how frustrating it can be to constantly get sort of nagged by brands. Will you tell everyone my candles are the best candles? And you're like, but I don't use candles. I have no interest in candles. Now I have to start hawking candles to my fans. They don't love doing that. One of the dirty little secrets is that very commonly after they've done a brand deal, as soon as they're legally allowed, they delete the post. Like they actually don't want your post in their feed at all. And so the thought was, well, is there any way to make this relationship better? Like, is there any way we could help these people work with brands in a new way? So basically trying to find some way to work out which influencers like which brands and then introduce them together. And that's quite mind-blowing for the influencer to actually get an email from someone they like. Oh my God, I love your brand. I've been buying your products for years, right? That's what we set out to do, and that's what we built. But during when COVID hit, what happened was we started to look at, influencers basically bring a lot of attention to your brand, but what we really needed to get was sales. And so we're thinking about how can we generate almost free sales for brands? And the obvious answer to that is, which is not obvious, by the way, I just went to a marketing conference and everyone was talking about how to get more out of the money you're spending on Google and Facebook advertising, which makes sense, but no one talked about, well, what if you just partner with other brands? So the other brands have traffic. The brands in our network have 390 million visitors a month. So why not push your products into that traffic for free? They're willing to partner. So you'll get a company will sell bicycles and this company sells helmets. The bicycle company doesn't have helmets yet. So why don't we just put the helmets into their store? So now forever, as long as you can maintain that relationship, you get their traffic for free. It's like managing to get your products into a retail store. Imagine you got your product in the Apple store. That's really exciting. That's how the world works, is through partnerships. And yet no one's really talking about it. So why not try to get more of that kind of sharing? Like Bird Scooters have decided now that they want people to wear helmets. And so we power the helmet relationship for them with 1,000 helmets. And so it's that kind of ability for it to go both directions, actually. So either one can sell the other person's products, but they can also do it the other direction. So why does this matter? Well, because what it means is that when the customer's on your website buying your product, instead of leaving to buy the other things, the complementary things that go with what you sell, which is really a bad thing. You really don't want them to go to someone else's cart to buy the helmets and the gloves and the bike locks and everything else because you just don't sell it or you don't make them. And so once you start down that road, it's quite shocking to see how many websites don't think about the complementary things. So you'll see someone selling spaghetti, but they don't sell the other ingredients that are in their recipes, right? So we make spaghetti. Here's some great spaghetti recipes, but we don't want to sell you anything else related to that. Or there'll be, there was a lady I talked to who makes bags that go to the beach. And it was quite stunning to her, this idea that you would sell the things that go in the bag. She was thinking, I got to make more bags because I'm a bag company. But in reality, the people are just going to go leave and buy the other things elsewhere. So why not curate them for them? And so that's really the basic idea. And somehow that pulled me out of retirement. So somehow I'm back in the saddle again. We have a pretty large team and we have, a lot of brands that they're getting quite excited about this as the technology continues to improve. And so that's what I'm up to these days. That was the longest answer ever, huh?
That is fascinating. There's a lot to unpack there. But yeah, that's a really fun, backstory. And yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, David. First of all, I love that because really not often in business are there win-wins for everybody, right? A lot of times things are a zero-sum game, and so I think being able to pull in win-win opportunities for both sides is just such a value add there. And then for that example you gave as far as bikes, that's one thing that I used to sell online, and so I was always pushing bikes, but then as far as like helmets, maybe shoes, things like that, I didn't want to have to inventory them. I didn't have to want to create product pages, all of that. Whereas just like partnering with, other brands, it's something I could have done, but I didn't. So having a tool like Carro where it's able to automatically pull those products into my site and be able to sell them online using the other brands inventory, they're using their, just their overall brand to sell on my site, that'd just be such a big value add.
Yeah, what's interesting about it is today, a lot of people still want to buy the helmets and put them in a warehouse and touch them and insure them and pay for freight and restocking fees and clearance sales and all that stuff. And it's like, why would you ever do that anymore? Now that the reality is it means you limit what you're willing to sell, because now you're not going to buy all the sizes and all the colors. You tend to buy the 3 colors you think are going to be popular. Like you literally come up in your own head. I think the white's going to be popular. I think the beige one or the gold one. I'm not sure about the gold one. Well, in this scenario, you can instantly have all the colors and all the sizes with no risk whatsoever, because you only pay the wholesale price after the sale has happened. So once the sale happens, then you pay the helmet company for the helmet, and then they send it out to the customer. So this means you can experiment. And to be clear on that, that means that if you as a bike company find that you're selling a lot of helmets, which I would, you can imagine does happen, then at some point, maybe you can start to work out, should I do gloves next? Like for my own products, should I make gloves, or should I make helmets, or should I make locks? You can start testing and start to really understand your audience at absolutely no risk whatsoever. And another thing that's kind of crazy that we're seeing is people are realizing, the way when you look at a calendar these days, there's actually a vacation or some kind of event for every single day. Like today's yoga day, or tomorrow's going to be, bird day or something like that. There's nothing to stop you creating pop-up stores. Like the 4th of July, you can have a pop-up store, fill it with products, and that you curate, and then take it down when the 4th of July is over. And the point is that then allows you to keep your store feeling fresh, right? Because you can keep sort of re-merchandising. Instead of, a lot of people will build a store with like 3 or 4 different things that they make, and then that's their whole store. And a year later, it looks exactly the same. It's the same store. That's my 3 things I make. Someday I want to add a 4th thing. That doesn't make your store really alive and fun to keep visiting, So that's something to think about as well, is how to sort of take advantage of the calendar and the crazy amount of events that occur these days.
Great. So I'm wondering, do you feel that extensive brand partnerships are the future of e-commerce? And do you think that they're an effective counterbalance to the giant e-commerce platforms, of course, talking Amazon, Walmart, Target, and all that here?
Yeah, it's a little complicated. When you really look down the track, I think Amazon's going to own every category. So I think Amazon is ultimately going to be Amazon, and they'll own the brands selling just about every category that matters. They're making private labels for everything. So at some point, don't know how many years it'll be, but at some point they'll just own all the major categories and sell the most product in every category. And so is that a great future? I think for brands, they have to find a way to grow and to stand on their own feet and have their own customers, because Amazon owns all their customers. So I think owning customers is everything. So what I do now is I look at influencers and I say, well, hold on a minute. All the influencers that are wealthy, like the ones that are super wealthy, have customers. And what they've done is they've converted followers to customers. And so then you go, well, which would you prefer, followers or customers? For the overall value of your personal brand, trust me, having customers is a big deal. Yet you say to yourself, well, how many? I'm estimating there's about 60 million influencers in the world. So what percentage of those do you think have actually built stores and got their own customers and stopped just giving all their customers to entities like Amazon or their merch company? Their merch company always keeps their customers. They get a little kickback for each t-shirt that sells, but somehow they don't end up owning it. So my estimate is less than 1%. So there's this enormous opportunity space, I think, for influencers to start to convert their followers to customers, they have to build stores so they can own those customers. You can't do it through affiliate links. You'll never, ever get there. Affiliate links just means driving your traffic to someone else so they can keep the customers. And just really make this crystal clear. If imagine you've sold 100,000 e-bikes and there are tons of e-bike influencers with followers. Who would you prefer to work with? The person that sold 100,000 that has those actual customers, or would you prefer to work with, people that ride around on e-bikes? So that's the point, is that the future I see is one where influencers are going to start selling directly in their feeds. And so in a way, Adam, this is something that you're probably also starting to feel, is this idea of moving people around on the internet is very expensive. So why would an influencer drive you out of their feed to go to a website with all the loss and cost of doing that when they can just sell the product directly in the feed? And so I think that's really the destination for all of this, is that the brand relationships, curating, sort of deciding who you want to work with, what you want to sell, what pricing you're going to set, all of that happens in something like Carro, but then the actual sales are going to end up happening right in your feed. So that to us is like this true north of where we think, and I think influencers are going to become incredibly important. Do you think there'll be more influencers or less influencers in the future?
Safe to say more, in my opinion.
So I have a teenage daughter, and I just watch this whole thing. I think it's fascinating, and we have incredible influencers that have signed up on our platform. So it's without doubt something that the successful influencers are starting to really embrace, this idea of building their brand and, starting to build real customer databases. So that's where we're continuing to develop the tech. One of the things that's coming out soon, we made a bit of a mistake. I think at one point we created a directory that was based on brands. So, because this is not drop shipping from China or something like this. This is actually working with real brands. So to have a directory of the brands made sense to us. And so we put that together. And then what happened was, people would type in dog beds. And it's like, well, that doesn't work, because it's going to look for companies called dog beds. And so then you say, well, no problem, just add all the other products, just search by product. But the problem is that what you find in e-commerce is nobody has ever agreed on what the taxonomy is for how you list products. So every store has just done it whatever way they felt like, and it's a hot mess. And so we've had to literally make computer vision. We have a team in the Philippines supervising the machine learning, trying to tag and handle millions of products. It's a very complicated affair, and that's actually launching in July, which is really exciting. So they'll be able to search across all brands, and basically we've normalized all of their products. But this is just you see, for me, this is fun because we're inventing and we're sort of thinking, well, this hasn't been solved yet, so how do you solve that? For me, that's the best place to be. And it's something in the video game industry. If you're not thinking that way, you're in trouble. If you're just copying everybody else, you'll be in trouble. So you have to continuously sort of challenge the team.
I think that's super interesting as far as the objective of video games is always overcoming challenges, and the same thing with businesses, that it's every step of the way, there's always something new, especially in e-commerce space. Just thinking of marketing, you tackle Facebook ads and you tackle Google ads, and there's SEO, then there's email marketing. And there's just always like a next level to the game, essentially. And so I think that the gaming experience really correlates so well with the e-commerce space. And then, so if I'm a brand, another thing that I sell is chicken coops. And so, for example, if I come to Carro with a chicken coop brand, and so I have all my woodworking, all that, my wooden kind of Amish style chicken coops, and then would I, in theory, be able to partner with brands on Carro, maybe somebody that's like a chicken pen, like fence specialist, maybe a chicken feed specialist, things like that. Is that how that would work? Then I'd, work with somebody on your team, or be able to search through the directory and database, and then be able to build partnerships with those other brands selling similar products.
Yes, exactly. So the concept is that there's 2 million brands there's 2 million stores on Shopify today, and any two stores can work together by installing Carro. Think of it as like a bridge. So if you know somebody that you want to work with, both install Carro and you can immediately do business. It's that simple. But what's actually occurred recently is something quite surprising, is we're having large enterprise companies look at our collection of brands and say, we'd like to work with these brands. Can you wire us in? And we, for example, we just launched with Univision, the TV. They have like a QVC style thing where they sell live on TV, and they need products. So suddenly we're powering products on Univision television live selling. And we have some more really cool announcements coming down that path. But the concept being that you have these large entities that are looking to get products to sort of replace their old affiliate systems in certain cases. So there's websites out there, major entities that have lots of media websites that want to replace them with them owning all the customers instead of, just getting an affiliate fee or always forwarding everyone away. Now they can keep them and keep the customers. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, in your specific case, it's just a case of who do you know that you would like to work with? And then can you guys actually connect and do that? Also, are there any influencers out there that talk about your space? And I've actually watched people. So the answer is yes. The trick is then actually saying to them, have you ever thought of actually creating your own store and owning your own customers? And we'd be happy to have you sell our products. The reason being, today, if you want to work with an influencer, usually you have to pay them something. In certain cases, you have to sponsor them or something like that. That can get quite expensive, and there's no guarantee of any sales. In this scenario, in a way, you're letting them do their own thing. It's their own store. They're going to promote it all they can. And you just sit in their store collecting traffic for free. So it's the best influencer relationship you're ever going to have. And so that's why you might be the one that actually suggests it to them. Hey, why don't you build a Shopify store? And, you can immediately have our products right out of the gate. And you'll get the retailer cut. So you'll get a really good cut on the deal. And why does that matter? Because then you're doing the land grab. You're getting yourself into all of their stores before others come along and start realizing that this is a good move. But if you can sit in their store, having them. So to be clear, they make the sale, but you actually do the logistics. So the order actually, while it happened over here, the order is actually generated in your store to do the shipping. By you handling the shipping, you've just saved all the margin. So instead of that having to be moved to a warehouse and freight and people touching it and all the rest of it, which just burns margin, the fact that it never moved off your shelf until it's sold is phenomenal. And sort of building that infrastructure is something with Carro you can do instantly, like just by both installing, it just happens. So it's a land grab. How many influencer stores could you possibly get your products into before anybody else? That would be, for me, I think that would be a very smart move.
The overall win-win, so seamless. So just, really big fan of the product and mindset behind it.
So we have one new feature that we put on request. So you have to click a request button and then someone will talk to you about it, but it's working. And what it is bundles. So that allows you to think, what's the starter kit to do something? And imagine you don't make all the things you need to start. You can include products from other brands that you recommend. So you can basically create a product or a new SKU that is actually maybe 3 or 4 different things. And they just add to cart, and anyone can sell that bundle. But what actually happens when the bundle is bought is it breaks it apart and sends out the logistics behind the scene that the customer doesn't need to know, but behind the scenes, we're breaking it apart and sending out the pieces of that puzzle. So that matters for things like, a new puppy pack or something like that. There's you need all kinds of different things, beds and food and all this stuff. So you could create a curated, here's what you need for a new puppy. And one other thing to think about, which I think is kind of fun, is this idea of making digital SKUs is one concept, which, hey, I'm going to sell a PDF or something, which, by the way, has the best margin of any sale you'll ever do, right? It's just a digital sale. But then there's one above that you don't see very often in stores, which is some kind of experiential. I'll give you an example. Is a company spoke to us that was doing an emergency call with a vet. Imagine you need an emergency call with a vet. Then they have that, but they had not really thought about, well, what if we were to sell that as a SKU? So it's not a digital SKU, it's an experiential SKU, like you're going to call somebody in an emergency. And then you can add that to the new puppy pack, right? So you get an emergency call with a vet. That's where I'm seeing some innovation and people thinking outside the box. Can I sell a tour of the winery with a box of the wine or something like that? You can start to think a little bit differently about experiential plus digital plus physical. Another thing that we're seeing is people building marketplaces. So, I make electric blenders, so I need stuff to sell that goes in the blender, please. BlendJet has done a marketplace with us with companies like Optily, that, because they don't have the refrigerated warehousing to handle lots of oat milk, for example, but Oatly's great. And so why not just add that to your store? And so any of that kind of stuff just becomes possible using our tech through those kind of brands.
Amazing. Yeah. Really, really fascinating stuff and definitely a great space to watch. Well, there's been a ton of great information that you've gone over there, David, but unfortunately we are out of time for this episode. So I'd like to end on the question that we ask all of our guests at the end. And that is, if our listeners come away from this episode with just one thing that they can start to implement today to accelerate their online business, what is that one thing?
If you have an online business, the thing I would recommend is really looking hard at what you can do to enjoy other people's traffic and attention. Like how can you collaborate and share? So I would definitely invest time into that. Like, talk to other CEOs that find other brands that you like and think would be a great partner for you, and do the same thing with influencers. So don't necessarily go to the influencer just saying, will you please promote my stuff? Instead, basically, in certain cases, you'll be the first person to talk to them about this, because again, it's 99% aren't doing it yet, is saying to them, have you ever thought of converting your followers to customers? And, we'd love to contribute our product into your store so that you can get started on doing that. And you'll probably find that conversation will be much more interesting to them than just saying, please tell everybody to buy my stuff.
Awesome. Great advice. So thank you so much for being on the show, David. Adam, it's been a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Optily Radio, Accelerate e-commerce marketing. We're of course brought to you by Optily, the new Shopify app that's revolutionizing how store owners manage their ad spend across Facebook, Instagram, Google, and YouTube. If you're one of the millions who is struggling to know where to spend your marketing dollars for the most impact, try out Optily free for 2 weeks. Watch your returns increase, hours open up in your schedule, and achieve your business goals fast. Learn more at optily.com. We'll catch you back here next time on Optily Radio for more expert tips on growing your online store through marketing. Take care.